and also exploring opportunities for improvement in the policy frameworks is the way we think it could work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gonzalo. I think it's a very big issue in many countries, and certainly we had a World Heritage Symposium in Cairns only 2 weeks ago, and it was a major issue there. Okay, our last speaker is very well known to us in my part of the world, and I hope I can find his bio. There he is. And Alex, a very long-term conservationist in Australia. He's written his own bio, and he says he was first arrested in front of a bulldozer, which was logging Farmhouse Creek, which is now on the World Heritage List, in 1986. He set the Australian record for sitting up a tree in front of bulldozers. He was the Executive Director of the Australian Wilderness Society from 1997 to 2010. And in that time, he's been centrally involved in campaigns to protect Tasmanian forests, inscribe Australia's sub-Antarctic islands on the World Heritage List, and the campaign to stop the Jabiluka uranium mine in Kakadu World Heritage Area. Alec attended his first IUCN Congress in Perth in 1990 and his first World Heritage Committee meeting in 1997. He has some unusual characteristics, Alec. He's the current managing director of the largest wood chip mill in the Southern Hemisphere. You'll have to ask him about that. And the principal of his own consulting company, Strategic Investments. We've asked Alec to share his observations and suggestions, particularly after the recent World Heritage Committee meeting in St. Petersburg, Russia, particularly in relation to the suggestion to form a new body, World Heritage Watch. So, Alec Mann.
Thank you. Just make sure everybody can hear me at the back. Yep. Okay. Yeah, well look, thanks for that, Penny. The reason that I thought it'd be useful to just talk about the fact that I've been around a while is because in Australia, most of the big land use battles of the last 25 years have been settled in one form or another through the World Heritage Convention. It is one of the greatest conservation tools in the world. It's there to protect the greatest works of man and nature, and if we can't protect World Heritage, then I don't think there's too much hope for the rest of the things that we work on. Now, the World Heritage Convention has always had, I think, a pretty rigorous approach to dealing with World Heritage, and that's why the World Heritage Convention itself has had, I think, a great deal of integrity and respect around the world. So I was a bit shocked, I have to say, when we had an NGO forum before the World Heritage Committee meeting in St. Petersburg, and the former director of the World Heritage Centre in Paris, Mr. Bushnaki, made one of the most scathing assessments I've ever heard of how the World Heritage Committee itself was making decisions. It was quite extraordinary. And I thought, I hadn't been to a World Heritage Committee meeting for a few years, and I thought, wow, this is pretty unusual. But what I saw at the World Heritage Committee meeting in St. Petersburg was something that anyone who cares about the future of the convention and the sites that are currently protected by the convention should be deeply alarmed by. And the reason for that is, I'll just go back quickly to the core of what the World Heritage Convention is really meant to be about. It's meant to be about peer pressure from the global community on the individual state party. People have to work very hard to get a site on the World Heritage List, but once it's on the World Heritage List, then there's a two-way obligation there. It's not just up to the state party to badly manage it or not. It's not up to the state party to delist it or not. Once it goes on the list, it's something that we in the global community have a two-way responsibility for. And of course this leads to lots of argy-bargy in the committee, but by and large, for the bulk of the convention's history, the broader grouping in the convention have kept enough pressure on the individual state parties, who wax and wane like all governments, to uphold the standards of the convention, to not put sites on that shouldn't be on there, and to fix problems as they arise. And what I saw in St. Petersburg was exactly the opposite of that. Basically, the current view was whatever the state party wants is what the state party gets. So if you've got an inadequate World Heritage Site that the advisory bodies, say ICOMOS or IUCN, or in some cases both, say good but not good enough, they just go off, have a backroom deal, come out and say, right, we're all voting for this one. Tick the box. Bad. That's bad. That's good compared to what was to come, because the next logical step in that was, well, what else does a state party want? Well, one state party, two state parties in fact, Russia, who have a state-owned uranium company, wanted to carve 40,000 hectares out of the biggest game reserve in Africa, Selous National Park. Unsurprisingly, IUCN said this is a really bad idea. This is meant to be a flagship. It's, you know, one of the last great strongholds of nature on the continent. Bad idea. Guess what? Tick the box. Now, if this continues on, the derision which is already starting to build around the committee itself will end up being projected onto the convention and the sites themselves. So I believe that people who care about World Heritage have to mobilise and genuinely assist governments who are trying to do the right thing, and genuinely pressure governments who are doing the wrong thing. You know, also known as stronger interaction from civil society. So I was asked, a couple of us were asked out of the NGO forum to put together an international network to work around the convention with state parties, and I have to be clear, and many of the state parties who were there, who were not actually on the committee, because there's 190 state parties who were signatories to the convention, but there are only 21 on the committee at any one time. Many of the state parties who were not on the committee were desperate for an international network of NGOs to strengthen and work around the convention. It will not be a substitute for the advisory bodies. They are part of the convention, but there needs to be a broader role for civil society. So that's just a bit of background. It's still in the early days. I'm on the organising committee, so anybody who's interested in being involved, please contact me afterwards. I'm here to network, and I hope to have as much involvement as we can from both IUCN and ICOMOS in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alec, for two things. A very succinct and valuable contribution, but also helping us make up a bit of time. So thank you for that. Right. I've now got a fairly demanding task, really, which is to try to draw from you a little bit of distillation. As I say, we're not writing a new communique. We're not trying to revisit the whole of the fairly lengthy motion that will go before the Assembly later this week. We're just really trying to, in a sense, from this gathering, and it's a substantial gathering of the World Heritage constituency, perhaps draw out some key points. And I might need your help, I think. I'm not sure about this. I don't know, how good a scribe are you, Tim? Because it's a bit difficult to do both. It did occur to me, though, that I might try and guide it, given that we've only got half an hour, that we can't necessarily start from scratch. I think it is up to me probably to facilitate, to sort of draw out perhaps some headings from what we've been hearing. So I'm going to give it a go. You don't have to agree with it. You can say, no, we need another heading up there. But this is my first cut if you like. So what I've heard, actually I will put these up, what I've heard is certainly some messages around confirming IUCN's commitment and role. We're hearing constantly IUCN's the key advisory body. I would like some messages to go to IUCN about how important it is. Obviously Tim can't put that up there, but we can. About IUCN being properly resourced to keep up that key role. So I would like to suggest that we do try to find a form of words around IUCN's key role and resourcing. Now,
and I guess the room can't hear you when you put it back to.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry? We tried to do this on the computer, but we couldn't do it on the computer because it all had to be uploaded 3 hours earlier. Now the problem is, people at the back are not going to be able to.
We can't even see it from here.
You can't even see it from there. Oh, okay. Well, I'll use the black
And I think
one.
we know what you.
Okay. Well, maybe we have to do it almost verbally and not be too concerned about butcher's paper. It's not going to work in a very long, skinny room. Okay. So another one is standards. We're hearing, and particularly in that last presentation, that there's a danger that the standards are slipping, that the rigour that needs to go into the whole process of nomination and the consideration of nominations is perhaps slipping. Do we want to say something succinct about the maintenance of standards? The other ones that I heard are the integrity of the process. Now this is a slightly more difficult area, and some people may be reluctant because it's getting close to criticism or a political statement. But we have heard that the integrity of the process from very plausible people is starting to be brought into question. So at least without pointing fingers, perhaps we could call for there to be the highest levels of integrity and rigour in the process. The other two issues that I heard very strongly were the issue of constructive support, that it's fine to get an area onto the list, but then we've heard from everyone about the increasing threats, and obviously some nations are a lot better equipped to respond to those threats. But as Tim, I think, was saying, you know, the problem is very often you're only hearing about the major threat on the floor of the World Heritage Committee meeting. We need to, and perhaps that's another message to IUCN, that capacity that Tim was talking about, to actually be much more actively engaged, to engage all of us, the IUCN family, in that monitoring, that early warning, that response. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is the last message that we heard from Gonzalo, but also from many other people, from Jessica, which is the whole issue of human engagement, respect for rights, incorporation of the needs of people who are dependent on these World Heritage areas, that these are the traditional lands of these people, and how we can, again, even though I know that's in the motion, but it would be good again to come from this meeting. So they're my headings. So basically, it's really over to you, but I thought maybe if we just quickly structure it around that. IUCN's commitment to World Heritage, who wants to speak to that, or find a form of words, or whatever.
But do people agree? I don't know whether people agree, I guess.
Well, no. Well, I first of all, it's absolutely open to you to agree, disagree, add some more, right up the back, and go to a mic, please.
Is this working? Yes. I'm Ken Wilson from the Christensen Fund. This has been a fabulous session. And I think this is a really necessary, sharp call to action from us. I think we really have to recognize that we have to wake up and act on. Did you have 4 areas? You have 4 areas, I think.
We've
Is it
actually
4?
got 5.
However many it is, I think all of them are right. And I think a number of them are quite closely linked. I think that if we are to adequately hold states to account, key actors in doing that are going to be the communities in and around these World Heritage Sites. And that through historical processes that the various panelists described, often those people will have been disempowered by the process of creating these World Heritage Sites, and now we rely on them to help to deal with state actors that want to log, dam, mine, or whatever these same sites. And so I think that it's great that we lay them out as 4 areas, but clearly we have an integrated solution here. I think that the motion is a great one. I think the motion could even say more about that, that last aspect. I don't know how everyone else in this audience is feeling. The people that I've kind of bumped into during these presentations, I think, are feeling quite agitated, and we need to send a very clear message that we cannot have a situation where we have a convention that 21 executive committee members are going to ignore clear standards and clear process and clear technical recommendations.
Okay. So I actually need a mic myself. Can I take this off?
No, I can't. That was rather succinctly put at the end of that. To maintain, basically there was a call there on standards to maintain, how did you put it? It was very good. Basically there's the integrity of processes, the integrity of the convention, the integrity of the assessment, listing and management. It was very well put. The trouble is I can't remember exactly what you said. That's why I need you up there too.
I think if someone's capturing it, we keep letting others intervene and build on this great.
Okay, that would be very helpful to me, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Jessica, maybe you and Tim could both scribe a little bit for me.
I can do it
Under those headings.
I have the worst handwriting in the world. This is not a good plan. I think your handwriting is probably
Quickly, because we don't have much time.
Okay.
Some other interventions, please, Nigel.
Okay.
Nigel Crowhall from the theme on Indigenous Peoples, Local Community Secretary of Protected Areas. Right. I think there's a couple of obvious recommendations. The one is that we have this massive commission system within the IUCN, and we have not yet fully mobilized that in terms of doing the social assessment advice into the nomination process. We are doing that. We've had some remarkable success already. So I think there are 2 aspects to that. One is we have to formalize within the IUCN the relationship between the commissions and the World Heritage Division on making sure there's a social assessment of every single nomination before it goes through, and to do that in a systematic and well-structured way. And by that I also mean that there are Indigenous experts themselves who are capable of doing some of this assessment work, and we have to make that a priority to achieve. The other, I think, problem area, so it's a question and a recommendation, is the program of work on protected areas was created by the IUCN. It came out of the Durban World Parks Congress and basically provides most of the answers of the problems that we're having within the World Heritage Convention. So we have 2 UN convention mechanisms, the CBD and the World Heritage Convention, and yet there isn't an agreement inside the UN about the relationship between the PAPA standards and the World Heritage Convention. So one question is how to open that question up with the UN system. So the IUCN is putting a lot of work into PAPA. We know that PAPA is really the answer to many of the World Heritage problems. It also creates a standards and a guideline system. So how to do that? Where does IUCN stand in relation to CBD and UNESCO to move that forward? There is also a rather complex area around how do Indigenous people speak in these platforms? Because it's very easy to say that local communities and Indigenous people must be involved, but in what way? What is their structure? And the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is very clear that indigenous peoples must be allowed to organize in their own way, and that that's not imposed on them by the state. And yet our experience is the state either ignores that there is some institutional capacity, or they define for the community you must fit into this mechanism, and that's the only way you're going to speak. So there's a degree of education within inside IUCN about what the UNDRIP means in terms of the interface between state institutions and indigenous peoples' institutions, and how that mechanism works. And I agree with Gonzalo completely that the Permanent Forum has a role with that, and also the expert mechanism on the rights of indigenous peoples, which has been studying this question of interinstitutional interfaces. Those are technical pieces of work that the IUCN still has to engage in. And the last one, just to flag, is maybe last quick two. The one is, I think the states are not clear what is being asked of them. They submit a natural heritage application. They think they're going to be measured on biodiversity plans. Nobody's telling them what is required of them in terms of the social process. And when we pushed back one of the proposals in Africa last year, they went back and they did their homework, and they did it correctly, and they came back with a much better plan. But nobody had said to the state, this is what's required.